Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Jutia. It is a very busy Wednesday here at CBS News. We are watching what is happening in the United States and all around the world. If it is coming into the broadcast center on one of these monitors, we're going to bring it to you live right here. This is CBS News 24/7. The President of the United States set to address the nation tonight on his decision to leave the presidential race as likely nominee Kamala Harris hits the campaign trail. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address Congress today. Dozens of lawmakers plan to boycott, and hundreds of demonstrators have already been arrested ahead of his speech. Plus, the pilot was the sole survivor of a plane crash in Nepal. What we know about this very tragic incident. All that in a little bit later, but we start this morning with this. In just a few hours, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address a joint meeting of Congress. He's also expected to meet with President Biden, Vice President Harris, and former President Trump this week. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is following all the action on Capitol Hill, and he joins me now to discuss. So, Scott, what are we expecting to hear from the PM when he addresses members of Congress? And what are you hearing from lawmakers ahead of the address?
And when he addresses this joint meeting of Congress, Vlad, he is in effect addressing the nation and the world, talking about the road ahead with the war in Gaza. But at the same time, Vlad, he's really spotlighting divisions inside the Congress over Israel's handling of this war. There are going to be dozens of Democrats who don't attend, who notoriously boycott this address by Netanyahu because there are concerns about how he's administering the war, that he's using the Congress to try to bolster his own political support back home, and that at this moment, they're better off not attending. This is including some of the heaviest hitters in Congress. Patty Murray, one of the top-ranking Senate Democrats, will not attend. Nancy Pelosi, former House Speaker this morning, revealed she will not attend. There are dozens and dozens of congressional Democrats who will have empty seats in the chamber, making a statement metaphorically, as Prime Minister Netanyahu makes a statement literally. Meanwhile, Vlad, outside the Capitol complex, they have re-erected this tall black metal fencing, the same kind we saw after January 6th, the same kind they've been putting in place during State of the Union addresses. There are concerns about the size and magnitude of protests that will gather near the Capitol ahead of and during Prime Minister Netanyahu's address.
Scott, the other question, of course, is who the prime minister is meeting with. He's not only meeting with the president of the United States and the vice president, he's also meeting with the former president of the United States. And this is sort of interesting to a lot of people because at this point in time, there is only one commander in chief. Have lawmakers said anything about why perhaps Netanyahu feels the need to meet with former President Trump?
That's going to come up as part of the conversation today, I suspect. That meeting on Friday at Mar-a-Lago is noticeable on the calendar. Also noticeable that the Prime Minister is meeting not just with President Biden and Vice President Harris, also, though, attending a memorial service for the late Senator Joe Lieberman today. Kind of a packed calendar for Prime Minister Netanyahu while he's in the United States. May not be a surprise. He's having an audience with former President Trump, both of whom are trying to bolster their conservative political supports in their respective countries. But it really is a full docket for the Prime Minister during his trip here to the States.
Yeah, indeed. And you'll be following all of it for us, Scott, as always. We appreciate you, man. Thank you so much. Okay, let's talk about what else is happening on the Hill today. FBI Director Christopher Wray is testifying in front of lawmakers. He's expected to face some tough questions about his bureau's investigation into the assassination attempt on Donald Trump at a rally in Pennsylvania last week. Now, of course, this all comes just one day after Kimberly Cheadle announced that she was resigning from her position as the director of the Secret Service. In a letter to the agency, she reiterated and takes full responsibility for the lapse in security. And there is new analysis of footage from the shooting that was found that shows the shooter firing up to 8 shots in under 6 seconds before he was killed by a Secret Service sniper. Multiple investigations into the circumstances around the shooting are ongoing. President Biden will address the nation tonight for the first time since bowing out of the presidential race. He returned to the White House yesterday after isolating in Delaware while he was recovering from COVID. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins me now to discuss. Ed, give us a preview of what this speech will be and how much of it will be an explanation about his agenda in what many are seeing and calling a lame duck presidency.
Yeah, Vlad, that's a good question. We don't have much other than what he said in his letter Sunday, that he promised to address the nation and further explain his decision to exit the race, which came, of course, as a big surprise after he insisted for so long publicly that he wasn't going anywhere. We expect him tonight to, again, outline that and give us some sense of what else he would like to do in the closing months here. In a message earlier this week to the rank and file around here, the chief of staff suggested that there's a lot to do regarding restoring the economy and fighting inflation, healthcare, implementing big legislation that had been passed in recent years, including the big infrastructure spending plan, and then foreign policy. For example, he is meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who, as you've been discussing with Scott, is going to be here throughout the week. They have a meeting on Thursday. There's a lot of concern still about what's going on in Ukraine, a lot to deal with when it comes to Iran and China as well, so we'll probably get some sense of that tonight. But this is likely to stand as one of the most memorable moments of the Biden presidency, as the aging president, who admits now that his age is one big reason why he has to go, explains exactly that decision to exit.
Yeah, and I wonder, Ed, if he will talk about how he expects to be involved in Vice President Harris's campaign for the presidency. We know that obviously the load will lessen on the president as he focuses on working on. I know, for example, that one of the things he really wants to focus on is what's happening in the Middle East. So it's an opportune moment that Bibi Netanyahu is here. But how might we see President Biden play into Vice President Harris's campaign for the presidency?
Well, he said on Monday when he addressed campaign staffers on the phone that he intends to campaign with her, that he isn't going anywhere. So inevitably he will be out on the road, and he's probably going to be most useful at this point defending that blue wall, those states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, that were critical to his victory in 2020, but where his appeal is perhaps the strongest, even though recent polling had suggested he was slipping behind Donald Trump. So inevitably, he can help with that, and he may also be able to help with fundraising. He was doing pretty good with that even before all this, even though Kamala Harris has now raised record sums in a short period of time. Inevitably, there will be a role. It's just not yet quite defined.
Yeah, and I'm just sort of wondering now, as I'm listening to you, Ed, if what kind of role the president will play at the convention, because this is sort of unique. This is a unique moment in history, and I'm usually good with my presidential history, but I can't remember what LBJ did back in 1969 after he chose not to run for a second term.
He went back to the ranch and basically stayed there. And did not attend the convention, as I recall, that year in 1968. As of now, while there's no specific plans, it seems likely there will be some kind of big tribute to Biden on maybe the first or second night of that convention, since the third and fourth nights are usually reserved for the vice presidential and presidential nominee. And traditionally, in recent cycles, Democrats have always invited their former presidents to address the crowd, whether it was Jimmy Carter back in the day or Bill Clinton more recently. Barack Obama, obviously, and his wife, Michelle Obama, were expected to be there. Now we can expect the current outgoing president to be among those that addresses the crowd in Chicago next month.
All right. And Ed, if you hear that Taylor Swift or Beyonce is going to be appearing, we'll stop all the presses. We'll stop all the cameras. You're coming on the air, and we're going to talk about it. I'm teasing. We know nothing. We know nothing.
No, we don't. Not yet. That would be a heck of a night.
Thank you. Appreciate you. All right, we're going to have special coverage of President Biden's primetime address to the nation. That will begin at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You can stream his remarks right here on CBS 24/7. Let's talk about Vice President Kamala Harris, who has hit the ground running as the likely Democratic presidential candidate today. She's attending a previously scheduled event in Indianapolis, and it comes after she held her first rally of the campaign yesterday in front of a room of roaring supporters in the battleground state of Wisconsin. CBS News campaign reporter Nidia Cavazos joins me now from Indianapolis to talk about this. This campaign rally event that she held yesterday, Nidia, you could feel the excitement through the television. What do we know about today's event, and what's the latest that we're hearing from the campaign?
Good morning. Well, Harris is going to be in Indiana. She'll be arriving shortly, and she's going to be delivering remarks today. And this is part of a social justice town hall with the Zeta Phi Beta sorority. And we know that this organization is really engaged with mobilizing the Black community. And like you said, this was already a visit that was in the books before, President Biden endorsed Harris for president on Sunday. And so, of course, this organization is now also in a very celebratory mood, and they're very much anticipating Harris's visit to Indiana. And like you also mentioned, this comes on the heels of her visit to Wisconsin yesterday. This was a campaign stop that was already also scheduled, but yesterday we found out that the campaign, and we were able to report this now, of course, that the campaign had been struggling to find a venue. That's why we couldn't get any details as to where she was going to be at, if this campaign event was still going to be taking place. And this is because they had to change and adapt to the situation. They were getting many RSVPs from community residents in Wisconsin, and so they had to find a larger venue, and we ended up seeing that this event had over 3,500 people according to the campaign, and there was just so much excitement. And now we're going to be seeing if this excitement translates to Indiana today.
Nydia, let me just ask you what you are learning about the vice presidential sweepstakes, the speed dating round that we all assume Vice President Harris is engaged in trying to choose the potential vice president of the United States. What are you hearing about some of the chances of some of those names that have been bandied about? Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Mark Kelly in Arizona.
For now, we know that this is a question that we're all wondering who exactly is going to be Vice President Harris's running mate. Throughout these past couple of months, she was the one campaigning as being a running mate. But now that everything has changed, she's a likely presidential nominee. And so in the upcoming days, we're going to continue gathering information, because as of now, we only have a list of potentials. We know that there's governors from certain key battleground states that are going to be important for the success of, sending Harris to the White House in 2024. But all of this is yet to be known, and of course, we're gathering our reporting on this.
All right, Nydia, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, let's pivot now and talk some weather with CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore. He has a look at the national forecast. Grant.
Hey, good morning, Vlad. Good morning to you guys at home. We're starting off our Wednesday morning with a real similar weather pattern that we've had for the last couple of days. A relatively stagnant weather pattern across the southeast up into the mid-Atlantic states, and then pushing heat to the west. You see all the cloud cover there across the southeastern United States, all the way up into the northeast, and then across the plains. Relatively comfortable, but you head north, and that's where we're running into some of the big heat that's expanding its way into the northern tier states. So that's what we're going to track today. We got still hot, but just not as hot conditions across the Central Valley of California. We got some monsoonal moisture moving in from the Rocky Mountains down south into portions of Texas. Also, record heat is what's moving to the east. Relatively nice conditions across the plains up into the portions of the Midwestern states, but very soggy conditions with even some flooding concerns across the northern Gulf states. Temperatures across the northern tier states approaching record highs in the triple digits today. Excessive heat warnings remain in effect for several places across western Arizona into southern California, but those heat alerts are expanding east now into the northern tier states. Meanwhile, flooding concerns across the northern Gulf states all the way into the mid-Atlantic today. But this is an ongoing soggy pattern that will continue, Vlad, through at least the second half of the week. Back to you.
All right, Grant, we'll be checking in with you just a little bit later. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. An explosion sent visitors running for safety at Yellowstone National Park. We're going to show you what caused the violent eruption. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. That's some harrowing video at Yellowstone National Park yesterday after a hydrothermal explosion in the park's Biscuit Basin. That's according to the U.S. Geological Survey. These types of explosions are incredibly violent events that result in water, steam, mud, and rock fragments spewing into the air. Thankfully, no injuries reported, but park officials are keeping that area of the park closed while they assess the damage. Really scary stuff. All right, let's go back to politics now. Former President Donald Trump, there he is. He will be holding his first rally since the candidate shakeup later today. Yesterday, his campaign filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission over the transfer of funding from the Biden campaign to the Harris campaign. All right, so joining me more with Trump's latest is CBS News campaign reporter and attorney Katrina Kaufman. Katrina, we know Donald Trump loves to sue. He's always suing. It's always taking it to court. What is he alleging in this complaint to the FEC? From what I understand, and I'm not a lawyer like you, but from what I understand, because the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, is already on the ticket, President Biden legally can transfer those funds to her campaign once she is nominated to be President of the United States. Now, if it had been somebody else, like some Democrats were calling for, if they wanted another person to step in and become that presidential candidate, that would have led to a legal challenge. So what is Trump saying?
So, Vlad, as you said, a lot of legal experts agree with you because when the campaign registered with the FEC, it was registered as the Biden-Harris campaign. They think that Biden should legally be able to just transfer these funds over to Harris as a solo candidate. But what Trump's campaign is alleging in this complaint that was filed yesterday to the FEC is, one, they're saying it's fraudulent for the campaign to just change the name from Biden to Harris on this paperwork. And then the other thing is that they're saying essentially that transferring these funds would be an illegal campaign contribution. They're calling it an excessive contribution and the biggest violation of campaign finance law in American history. This is a substantial amount of money. It's almost $100 million that would go to Harris. As we know, she's been very successful in fundraising in the short time since she joined the race. And what they're asking for the FEC to do is criminally investigate this as well as block the transfer from happening. Now, the FEC commission has 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans. One Democrat has indicated that she agrees with your assessment that Harris should get the funds, but they will now be weighing this issue.
All right, Katrina, stand by because we want to take our audience to what is happening right now on Capitol Hill. FBI Director Christopher Wray is testifying on the Bureau's investigation into that assassination attempt on President Trump. He's just begun his remarks, so let's listen in.
I offer my deepest condolences to the victims of the horrific assassination attempt in Butler County. To the friends and family of Corey Comparator, who by all accounts lost his life protecting others from danger. To the other victims, 2 of whom were critically wounded. And of course, to President Trump, former President Trump and his family. As I've said from the beginning, the attempted assassination of the former president was an attack on our democracy and our democratic process, and we will not and do not tolerate political violence of any kind, especially a despicable account of this magnitude. And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the bottom of what happened. We are bringing all the resources of the FBI to bear, both criminal and national security. Now, there's a whole lot of work underway and still a lot of work to do, and our understanding of what happened and why will continue to evolve, but we're going to leave no stone unturned. The shooter may be deceased, but the FBI's investigation is very much ongoing. To that point, I also want to acknowledge that I recognize both the congressional and the public interest in this case and the importance of this investigation to the American people. And I understand there are a lot of open questions. So while the investigation is very much ongoing and our assessments of the shooter and his actions continue to evolve, my hope here today is to do my best to provide you with all the information I can, given where we are at this point. I have been saying for some time now that we are living in an elevated threat environment. And tragically, The Butler County assassination attempt is another example, a particularly heinous and very public one, of what I've been talking about. But it also reinforces our need at the FBI and our ongoing commitment to stay focused on the threats, on the mission, and on the people we do the work with and the people we do the work for. Every day, all across this country and indeed around the world, the men and women of the FBI are doing just that, working around the clock to counter the threats we face. Just in the last year, for example, in California, the FBI and our partners targeted an organized crime syndicate responsible for trafficking fentanyl, meth, and cocaine all across North America. We charged the Mexican-based suppliers who brought the drugs into the United States, a network of Canada-based truck drivers who delivered the drugs, and the distributors in the United States who spread the poison into our communities. Staying on threats emanating from the border, I have warned for some time now about the threat that foreign terrorists may seek to exploit our southwest border or some other port of entry to advance a plot against Americans. Just last month, for instance, the Bureau and our Joint Terrorism Task Forces worked with ICE in multiple cities across the country as several individuals with suspected international terrorist ties were arrested using ICE's immigration authorities. Leading up to those arrests, hundreds of FBI employees dedicated countless hours to understand the threat and identify additional individuals of concern. Now, the physical security of the border is, of course, not in the FBI's lane, but as the threat has escalated, we're working with our partners in law enforcement and the intelligence community to find and stop foreign terrorists who would harm Americans and our interests. As concerning as the known or suspected terrorists encountered at the border are, perhaps even more concerning are those we do not yet know about because they provided fake documents or because we didn't have information connecting them to terrorism at the time they arrived in the United States. Staying ahead of today's threats demands that we work together. And for the FBI, that means doubling down on our partnerships, especially with state and local law enforcement. Whether it's working through our hundreds of joint terrorism task forces, to build out source networks to identify those who slip through the cracks, or targeting the worst of the worst responsible for the violence that still plagues far too many communities through our Safe Streets task forces, or taking the fight to the cartels responsible for trafficking the dangerous drugs like fentanyl, pouring into our country and claiming countless American lives. Staying ahead of the threat also means continuing to disrupt the cyber criminals ravaging businesses, large and small, and confronting nation states like China, targeting our innovation and our critical infrastructure. At the Bureau, we're proud to work side by side with our brothers and sisters in federal, state, and local law enforcement, our partners in the intelligence community, and others around the world to fulfill our commitment to keep Americans safe. Now, on Friday, the FBI will celebrate its 116th anniversary. 116 years of protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution. 116 years of working with our partners to safeguard the communities we serve. 116 years of innovating to stay ahead of the complex, evolving, and very real threats out there. I am proud of the legacy the men and women of the FBI have built and all they have accomplished for the American people. So, if I may, as we approach this week's anniversary, I would just like to say to all those who are part of the FBI family, from our current employees to our formers and to our partners across law enforcement and the intelligence community, thank you. Thank you for dedicating your lives to this country and to its people. It is both humbling and an honor to serve alongside you, and I look forward to the work we're going to continue to do together. And with that, thank you again for having me, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Director Wray. Excuse me. We'll now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, I'm way down here. I appreciate the chairman giving me this because I've got to leave. But let me ask this question. Why doesn't the FBI disclose to the American people all of the investigative detail and evidence that you are gathering as it is gathered?
Well, we have tried to be transparent with both Congress and the American people as we're going along in the investigation, frankly, unusually so for an ongoing investigation, given the sheer nature of it. We have provided a lot of information. I expect to continue to provide information. I expect to be able to provide some additional information here today in response to your questions and your colleagues. But part of the issue is that, as like in any investigation, as we proceed, facts evolve. Our understanding of what somebody said turns out to have more context that we didn't have before. We have additional leads out there. So part of our goal is not just to respect the ongoing investigation process, but also to make sure that we don't prematurely provide information that then 2 days later turns out to be different than what we told people, because that's very much, kind of a natural part of any investigation.
So, did Crooks fire 8 shots?
We have recovered 8 cartridges on the roof.
Why was Crooks allowed to get off 8 shots?
Well, that, I think, is something we're still digging into. Again, maybe this is a good place for me to make clear the different investigations that are going on. So, because certainly I understand.
Well, and given that I've only got 3 minutes left, and I know other members, I'm really interested because I appreciate your invitation. You said you're prepared to disclose things as questions are asked. So I don't want to waste time. I just want to get to the questions that might, and as many members as can, ask questions that you'll answer. I actually think I'd be glad for you to go on soliloquy, frankly, and tell us what you know. I think the American people want to know. Why was President Trump not kept off the stage?
We don't know the answer to that, but I want to be clear, and this is important because I think it goes to questions that I can and cannot answer. Our investigation, the FBI's mandate, is focused on the shooter and all things related to his attack. Now, obviously, I understand very much the intense interest and focus on the Secret Service's performance, actions, decision-making, et cetera. There are 2 separate after-action reviews, the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been convened that are focused on that. Now, our investigation will obviously overlap with that.
Here's the problem. We're out 13 days, and you say we've been disclosing. You know, we had the the colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police in front of Homeland yesterday. He was quite candid. He disclosed to us that Butler Emergency Services Unit personnel were posted into the windows on the 2nd floor of the AGR building, that they left there to go pursue the person that they spotted, Crooks, that they texted a photo of Crooks to the PSP representative in the command center. That information was relayed to the United States Secret Service. They asked that it be texted to someone else. That was many minutes before President Trump took the stand. What we don't know is why were they not keeping him off the stand? And to the extent, I know we always hear when there's a criminal investigation, you got to wait for that to develop. But do you have any reason do you have any other target of your criminal investigation other than Crooks, who's dead?
We are investigating the shooter both to determine his motive and his preparations and activities before the shooting, but also to make sure whether or not there are any co-conspirators, accomplices.
At this point, have you developed any evidence to so suggest that there are any accomplices or cooperators or assisters?
Not at this time, but again, the investigation's ongoing.
So here's the thing. While we wait, maybe for months, and I hate to say this, I'm not trying to take a pot shot, but the country went for years with the understanding that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation as offered by respected former intel officials, and the whole time the FBI had the laptop and then let that happen in public until finally offering testimony in a case. To the degree we wait to hear as a country and as a Congress what has happened in this event, because the FBI is conducting an investigation, it provides quarter for the U.S. Secret Service not perhaps to reckon with the problems that are obvious to everyone. So let's get a couple in while I've got 13 more seconds. One more question perhaps. Senator Grassley says that the records of the day show that there was a unmanned aerial surveillance operator on site? Was there? And why did that person not prevent crooks from being able to use a drone?
So again, questions about the Secret Service's performance are better directed to those other reviews. What I can tell you when it comes to drones is that Crooks himself had a drone, and I'm prepared to answer questions here today about the shooter and his use of the drone, for example.
My time's expired.
All right, you have been listening and watching to the FBI Director, Christopher Wray, who is there on Capitol Hill to not only discuss the FBI's investigation into the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, but he's also there to provide an update on the current threat environment that the United States and its people are facing. And so you heard in the director's opening statements there, not only questions related to that assassination attempt, but also the investigations that are ongoing into the rising, and this is something the FBI director has talked about, not just on Capitol Hill, but also to the media about the current state of violence in this country, whether it's anti-Semitic violence, whether it's racial violence, or now political violence. And part of what he is there to do is to also give insight to the American people as to what Congress sometimes does or does not do as it relates to political violence, the escalation in political violence that we have seen, whether it ranges from the attempted assassination of the former president to the attack on former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, to the shooting at that congressional baseball game that injured Congressman Steve Scalise, to the shooting of Gabby Giffords many, many years ago at her campaign rally event. So we're going to continue to follow the director's comments and the back and forth that he's going to engage in with members of Congress. And if there is anything that is relevant to the questions that people have today about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, we're going to bring it to you live right here on CBS News 24/7. For a moment, we're going to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, right now, happening in Washington, a memorial service is being held for late Senator Joseph Lieberman. The former vice presidential nominee died last March. There on your screen, you see former Vice President Al Gore. He is memorializing his friend. Let's listen.
Of improving and becoming complete. Each of us has the opportunity and responsibility to advance that process, both within ourselves and in the wider world around us. He quoted Rabbi Tarfon in the Talmud, who said, "The day is short and there is so much work to be done. You are not required to complete the work yourself, but you cannot withdraw from it either." And he concluded, "These beliefs were a powerful force in my upbringing and seem even more profound and true to me today." Even as a college student, he started the work of Tikkun Olam by going to the Deep South in a time of danger for those pushing for civil rights and voting rights there. He took this philosophy to heart on an issue that we worked on together, addressing the global climate crisis. He talked about how extreme events were becoming a more regular and now daily occurrence. He once said, "Today we can see with our own eyes what global warming is doing. And in that context, it becomes truly irresponsible, if not immoral, to not do something." By the way, yesterday was the hottest day in recorded history.
All right, folks, you are listening to former Vice President and United States Senator Al Gore memorializing the late Senator Joseph Lieberman. There were many firsts in Senator Lieberman's life, but one that is why Al Gore is there is because in 2000, Al Gore selected Joseph Lieberman to be his running mate as he sought the presidency of the United States. Of course, Joseph Lieberman being the first Jewish American to be on a major ticket for the presidency of the United States. So that memorial is ongoing. We'll keep dipping in and out of it and bring you some of the notable folks who get up there to talk about their friend Joe Lieberman. Meanwhile, Tonight's Oval Office address from President Biden comes as calls grow for him to resign from Republicans after announcing that he would not seek a second term. So I want to bring back CBS News senior White House correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who's still there at the White House for us. Ed, let's talk about this. Do you expect that the president will actually even address in this speech, which the way I sort of take it is this is a heartfelt speech to the American people about what he has accomplished and what he had hoped to accomplish, but what he sees are the limitations that all of us face, which is the march of time. But do you think that he'll talk about what some of the Republicans are suggesting, which seems to me to be more political in nature?
I think he's got no choice, Vlad, but to lay out for the nation and frankly for the world that while he may not be running, he's still in office and still plans to make full use of it to whatever extent he can. Earlier this week, to give a sense to the rank and file about what to expect in the next few months, the chief of staff suggested work on the economy, work on improving and bolstering access to health care, and then implementing the various pieces of legislation that have been passed in recent years, and foreign policy. So there's big meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday. There's likely to be continued focus on NATO and Ukraine, the situation in the Indo-Pacific, threats from Iran. And then we'll see what more he can possibly do with domestic policy, given that he'd have to work with an intransigent Congress, which can't even pass basic spending bills right now. He had hinted, the White House had hinted, for example, that there was going to be a series of proposals on how to revamp the U.S. Supreme Court as part of his sort of rejuvenated campaign. Don't be surprised if he hints at that again tonight, because it's likely he's still going to unveil it so that it's at least on the record and then out there as a campaign issue for Vice President Harris to either agree with or put distance between him and her on it. Frankly, she's inclined probably to support any real significant changes, and we'll see what they may be and when exactly he unveils them. But so there'll be that kind of stuff done. I wouldn't be surprised, Lad, for example, at this point, if there wasn't some excuse given to go overseas again before he's supposed to go to the G20 in November, to either conduct some kind of goodbye tour or to keep the meetings going on issues of global concern. So all of that yet to be seen. We'll learn more this afternoon when Karine Jean-Pierre briefs the reporter, the press corps here at the White House.
We'll be watching. Ed O'Keefe for us. Thank you, Ed, as always. Appreciate it, man. Okay, let's go back to that story that we told you about earlier at the top of the show. 18 people killed in a plane crash in Nepal this morning. The plane's pilot was the only survivor. He was rescued and taken to hospital for treatment. The crash happened shortly after the plane took off from Nepal's capital. It was heading to another airport in Nepal for a maintenance. Our Ashard Zargar is following this from New Delhi and joins me now to talk about this terrible, horrific incident. So we understand, Ashard, that the plane was on its way for routine scheduled maintenance, and that the aircraft, the folks that were on the aircraft were, for the most part, not passengers on their way to a destination, but technicians. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Good morning. This morning in the Nepal's capital, Kathmandu airport, it was a small plane that took off, and within 1 minute of its takeoff, the plane tilted towards its right and crashed to the ground and caught fire, in which all these 18 people died, and the lone survivor is the pilot of the airplane. There is the cause of the crash is not known yet. I believe there will be an investigation which has been launched, and so that's all we know for now.
Arshad, before we go, just explain to our viewers, it's been very difficult for the aircraft industry, the airline industry in Nepal. There have been a number of crashes, a number of people, some 350 people have lost their lives in recent years in Nepal. Why is that? What are some of the challenges that the Nepalese aviation industry face?
Well, Nepal is a very small country to the northeast of India. It's an Himalayan region. The terrain is quite mountainous. And almost all the airports in the country are very risky, so to say. The runways are very tricky, and the weather of the country is also very unpredictable at times, and which often leads to all these air crashes. But there has been criticism about the safety standards of the country, aviation safety standards of the country, which is why we have had so many air crashes in the country. Just last year, there were 68 people died in an air crash in January when a Yeti Airlines plane crashed. And before that, also the previous year in 2022, there was another crash. Flight Safety Foundation, which is a watchdog of the aviation safety, they have documented about 44 fatal air crashes in the country since 1946. So that's quite a big number.
All right, Arshad Zagar, a CBS News producer in New Delhi for us this morning. Thank you very much for that update. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, much more news ahead. You can see it's happening all behind me right here in the CBS News Broadcast Center. We have a lot more of it, so stick around. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, folks, we're less than 48 hours to the start of the Summer Olympics. The excitement is just beginning as Paris prepares for the opening ceremonies. CBS News correspondent Elaine Cobb is in Paris and joins me now for a preview. Elaine.
Vlad, Paris is indeed getting underway. Finishing touches being put to some of the sites still. Security has been thrown up across the city. So effectively, Paris is cut in half. And that's in preparation for the opening ceremony along the Seine River. We will have 94 boats going from east to west to stop in front of the Eiffel Tower, which will be the main viewing point. But there will be people on bridges all along the Seine and also on the upper and lower quays. Varying prices. You can pay 3,200 to sit on that bridge at the Eiffel Tower, 12,000 euros if you wanted a hospitality ticket. There are 10,500 athletes here. Most are expected to be there for the opening ceremony, but not all. Some will be already competing the next day, so they will instead be training, resting, and going to bed early. But some are actually already competing. The rugby sevens and the soccer started today. Soccer, Morocco is currently battling it out against Argentina, and in rugby sevens, France is playing the US.
I love it. Although I could do without the expensive seats and the tourists, so the comfort of my couch sounds good. But let me ask you about the news that we reported earlier on CBS Mornings, Elaine, which is that potentially the legendary, the iconic Celine Dion might take to the stage at the opening ceremonies and actually perform for millions of fans around the world who've been pining to see her ever since that horrible diagnosis of stiff person syndrome that she told us all about 2 years ago. We're showing some video here, but we also showed video of her from a documentary where she was hit by a bout of spasms, and the pain that she felt and that she was going through is one of the reasons that she hasn't been able to perform in 2 years. So what are you hearing about this potential return to the stage?
She's not officially confirmed, but Céline Dion is in Paris. She's been filmed. She was out today taking selfies with fans, and it's the biggest unofficial, official, yes, she is the main star. We're also expecting Aya Nakamura, who was named by President Macron as his choice, and there's a rumor Lady Gaga might also be there because she was spotted in Paris too.
That's exciting. And with that announcement about Aya Nakamura, I know that in France that there was some controversy about that. I'm so happy that she's actually going to be there taking to the stage, hand-selected by President Macron himself. It's really cool. Elaine Cobb, looking forward to getting all of your reports as the Olympics kicks off this weekend. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, if Monday felt a little hotter to you, you're probably not alone. New numbers show it is now the hottest day on record across the world. EU climate experts say the global average surface air temperature reached almost 63 degrees Fahrenheit, marginally higher than the record set last July. So we may be in store for another record this week as heat waves continue to scorch many, many parts of the world. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Rick Montanez joins me now with the very latest. So how's it feeling where you are this morning, Rick?
Vlad, hey, good morning. You know, it is comfortable right now because we found a park with shade here in Ontario, California, where we are about 50 miles inland away from the beaches, where it is nice and comfortable there. But here we're expecting another scorching day, temperatures 100 degrees or above in this region of Southern California known as the Inland Empire. And that is dangerous heat because we've seen back-to-back days of these temperatures this high, and it's been so warm, in fact, that some places aren't even getting relief overnight. You know, we usually expect those overnight lows to be nice and comfortable. Well, the mountain community of Idlewild, they broke a new record for the highest low temperature of the day, now set at 69 degrees the other day. Palm Springs even, get this, 92 degrees was the lowest the temperature got there on Sunday. So that is, of course, very hot. We also have an elevated fire risk in Southern California because of all this heat. So that's something we have to watch out for. A brush fire started on Sunday. That destroyed 6 homes in Riverside, damaged 7 others. So with this heat, it's for personal and your home protection.
All right, Rick Montanez, thank you, friend. Appreciate it. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast. I don't know about you, Grant. I know that it's hot, but I'll take the heat over the cold any day of the year. I'd rather it be, I don't care if it's 100 degrees.
I agree with you
100%,
Vlad. Yeah, I mean, look, heat is dangerous, no doubt about it, but there's something about the cold that really does make it tough. But look, I feel for the people across the desert Southwest into Southern California where, I mean, this is just day after day after day of triple-digit temperatures. This morning, like you heard, temperatures are relatively comfortable across the southwestern United States. You see LA at 65 degrees. Meanwhile, Phoenix currently is 65 degrees. Now, the heat across the southwestern and western part of the country is going to begin to spread to the east as we go throughout the day today into really the second half of the week into the weekend. So the heat continues. Excessive heat warnings remain in effect for Southern California, but this heat is advancing to the east. You can see those heat advisories in effect across parts of the northern Rockies. But look how portions of Montana and now into the Dakotas entering into this area of excessive heat and heat advisories. Triple-digit temperatures across the southwest, but look at this heat. Record high temperatures in Montana. Vlad, back to you.
All right, Grant, appreciate it, brother. Thank you. An encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.